This video was brought to you by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes is a very divisive film, to say the least. Although it was a hit at the box office, it was pretty universally panned both by critics and general audiences. One of the biggest points of criticism was the story. Not only does the film have a crazy story, but the story behind the film is just as wild. This movie had been in the works since the 1980s, with many wildly different versions that almost went into production with many iconic filmmakers who almost landed in the director's chair. So join me as we explore the long and troubled road that resulted in 2001's Planet of the Apes. But before we do that, I'd like to talk to you about the sponsor of today's video, Squarespace. If you are an entrepreneur looking to launch your own professional website, online store, portfolio, or blog, then look no further than Squarespace for all your website needs. Squarespace's design intelligence offers unlimited creative control. From customizable templates to pre-built layouts, you can craft a more personalized website tailored to you and your brand's specific needs. I have a feeling many of you watching are filmmakers or creators yourselves. Well, if that's the case, Squarespace is the perfect place to upload, showcase, and organize your videos or short films. You can even monetize your content by adding a paywall. So check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/IsenhartProductions to save 10% off your first purchase of a domain or website. Once again, thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now back to Planet of the Apes. Just as a preface to this section of the video, a lot of the information came from David Hughes' book, Tales from Development Hell. It is a really great read. If you're into this kind of stuff, I highly recommend you check it out. It'll be in the description below. Before we examine all the failed attempts, we need to quickly acquaint ourselves with the Planet of the Apes property. First, we have the iconic 1968 film Planet of the Apes, directed by Franklin J. Schaffner and starring Charlton Heston. It's a very popular and influential film, as I'm sure you know, and this movie got 4 direct sequels by various different directors. These films include 1970's Beneath the Planet of the Apes, 1971's Escape from the Planet of the Apes, 1972's Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, and finally 1973's Battle for the Planet of the Apes. All of these films received mixed to poor reviews and made less and less money as they went on. So naturally, the franchise came to an end. That was until 1988, where the story of 2001's Planet of the Apes first begins, over a decade before Tim Burton even entered the picture. After seeing Adam Rifkin's directorial debut, Never on Tuesday, Fox president Craig Baumgarten invited the young filmmaker to come pitch anything he wanted to the major studio. However, instead of pitching an original film, he pitched a film he always wanted to remake, that of course being Planet of the Apes. Since Rifkin had experience in the independent movie scene, he said he could make the film look huge for a very reasonable price, comparing it to James Cameron's Aliens. So Fox commissioned Rifkin to write a sequel, but not a sequel to the 5th film, an alternate sequel to the first. Rifkin best described this sequel as Spartacus with apes, and would pick up 300 years after the original film, when the ape empire reached its Roman era. It would follow a descendant of Heston's character, who would lead a revolt against the oppressive ape slave masters. At the same time, there would be a civil war between gorillas and chimpanzees, and there would be a coup in the government and drama and all kinds of good stuff. Rifkin turned in this script and Fox went bananas. They loved it. The only request was to shorten it by 10 pages, mostly due to budget concerns. Work began on this film right away, with Oscar-winning makeup artist Rick Baker on board, Danny Elfman set to compose the score, and big names like Tom Cruise or Charlie Sheen in talks for the lead role. This movie had the potential for greatness, but the hope was short-lived. As just days before pre-production was set to start, Craig Baumgarten was replaced as the president of Fox, and there was a quick succession of new studio heads. All the momentum of this project stopped, and new drafts of the screenplay were being commissioned. The script went through draft after draft, and the hope of Rifkin helming the project slowly faded away, which resulted in him pursuing other projects instead. And this version of the film was dead in the water. A few years later, Fox would take another stab at the Planet of the Apes remake. This time, it would be spearheaded by the producers behind Natural Born Killers, Don Murphy and James Hampshire, who were set on bringing this new Apes movie to life. They contacted 3-time Oscar winner Oliver Stone to see if he would helm the project. And although he didn't fully say yes, he also didn't say no. Although the rumors were pointing that Stone would be the director, he only signed on as an executive producer. But nevertheless, he was excited about the project. Stone attached Road Warrior and Beyond the Thunderdome screenwriter Terry Hayes to write the script. The film would be titled Return of the Apes, and here's a full plot synopsis of what this movie would have looked like. Set in the near future, a plague is making humans extinct. Geneticist Will Robinson discovers the plague is a genetic time bomb embedded in the Stone Age. He time travels with a pregnant colleague named Billy Ray Diamond to a time when Paleolithic humans were at war for the future of the planet with highly evolved apes. The ape's supreme commander is a gorilla named Drac. Robinson and Billy Ray discover a young human girl named Eve to be the next step in evolution. It was revealed that it was the apes that created the virus to destroy the human race. They protected her from the virus, thus ensuring the survival of the human race. When Fox chairman Peter Charin read the script, he stated that Return of the Apes was one of the best scripts he ever read. He also thought it had the potential to lead to sequels, spin-offs, and all kinds of merchandise. However, another executive, Dylan Sellers, thought that it could be improved with some comedy, and he pitched the idea of a scene where some of the apes were trying to play baseball, but they were missing one element, like a pitcher. Then Robinson's character came along and showed them, and they all started playing. This baseball bit sounds like a weird fact to include in this video, but I promise it will be important. Also, I wanted to include this funny quote from Hughes' book about this suggestion. "And a style which is customary in such meetings, everyone agreed that it would be a great idea, while secretly having no intention of including it or anything like it." So work began on assembling a cast and crew for Return of the Apes. Philip Noyce was attached to be the director of the project, who had previously directed Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. Oliver Stone originally approached Rick Baker to design the prosthetic makeup for the film, but he went with Stan Winston instead. So Baker was 0 for 2 on these Planet of the Apes remakes. Additionally, action superstar Arnold Schwarzenegger was in talks for the lead role, who was at the top of his game in the early 90s. By all means, this was shaping up to be a huge and potentially great movie. But Dylan Sellers was adamant on including his baseball scene in the movie, perhaps to justify his involvement in the process. So when Hayes turned in the next draft of the script without the ape baseball, Sellers fired him. When Philip Noyce got wind of this, he left the project as well. Additionally, Stone left the producer role to pursue other projects after creative differences on what the tone of the movie should be. As for Dylan Sellers, he would drunkenly crash his car, killing a Fox colleague, and earned himself jail time. So Oliver Stone's Planet of the Apes reboot movie was abandoned. However, some aspects of it would live on in the next failed attempt, such as the plot device of the baby-killing virus. Fox then brought on iconic filmmaker Chris Columbus to direct a new version of the story, and Columbus teamed up with Batman screenwriter Sam Hamm to write the script. Here's a synopsis for Columbus and Hamm's Planet of the Apes. An ape astronaut from another planet crash lands in New York Harbor, launching a virus that will make human beings extinct. Dr. Susan Landis, who works for the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, and Alexander Troy, an Area 51 scientist, use the ape spacecraft to return to the virus's planet of origin, hoping to find an antidote. They find an urban environment where apes armed with heavy weapons hunt humans. The main villain was Lord Zaius. In contrast to Dr. Zaius, Lord Zaius was cruel to humans. Landis and Troy discover the antidote and return to Earth, only to find out in their 74-year absence that apes have taken over the planet. The Statue of Liberty's once proud porcelain features have been crudely chiseled into the grotesque likeness of a great grinning ape. Although Arnold Schwarzenegger was still attached to the new script, Fox wasn't entirely sure that this was the version they wanted to make. Additionally, Columbus dropped out of the project following the passing of his mother. So that's when James Cameron, who was in the middle of making Titanic, entered the picture, with the possibility of him writing and producing a new version of the movie, which would draw more elements from the original film. Due to Cameron and Schwarzenegger's long history together, it seemed like the perfect team-up. However, following Titanic's insane success, Cameron began rethinking his future and decided to jump to other projects instead. More big-name filmmakers would be offered the director role, but would all decline. These included Michael Bay, Roland Emmerich, and Peter Jackson. Around this time, Schwarzenegger would also leave the project. So after not finding a director and losing their lead star, the project was back to square one once again. But not to worry, as soon another iconic director would enter the picture, and this is where the movie we know today finally began to take shape. In 1999, Fox hired Castaway and Apollo 13 screenwriter William Broyles Jr. to write a new script for the property. In addition to a screenwriter, Fox also set a release date for July of 2001. Broyles sent Fox an outline of the script, which he intended to be the first installment into a trilogy, and told the story of an astronaut crash landing on another planet that was ruled by civilized apes that enslaved humans, and that astronaut's struggle against a tyrannical leader that went by General Thade. This draft got the attention of the original Planet of the Apes producer, Richard D. Zanuck, who signed on to produce this one as well. The story also caught the eye of Tim Burton, who was intrigued with the idea of telling a new story in the world of apes, something that wasn't a remake or a sequel, but rather a reimagining. This movie also came at the perfect time, as Burton was available after his Superman Lives project for Warner Bros. Fell through, and he officially signed on in early 2000. Broyles then wrote a new draft of the script to better match Burton's style, which was predicted to cost upwards of $200 million. 2 months before pre-production was set to start, Fox brought on Mark Rosenthal and Lawrence Koner to rewrite the script so that it would be a more manageable $100 million. Ironically, one of the considered endings had the lead character crashing at Yankee Stadium, witnessing apes playing baseball. But the filmmakers decided to go with the confusing and controversial Abraham Lincoln ending instead. Mark Wahlberg was cast as the lead role of Leo Davidson, who dropped out of Ocean's 11 in order to work with Burton. Tim Roth was cast as the villainous General Thade, Michael Clark Duncan was cast as Colonel Attar, and the GOAT, Paul Giamatti, was cast as Limbo. The production of this film would prove to be very difficult for everyone involved, as Fox was unwilling to budge on their July 2001 release date. So nearly every step of production was rushed, and this was really detrimental in pre-production as rewrites were being made while the sets were being constructed. Principal photography kicked off in November of 2000. According to the director's commentary, they filmed portions at Lake Powell, which is where the original was shot. However, due to a local drought, the production crew had to pump in extra water. Fox considered using CGI for the apes, but Burton insisted on practical effects, which was a smart move as it meant that Rick Baker was finally able to work on a Planet of the Apes movie, and he absolutely knocked it out of the park. The makeup is probably the best part about this movie. In addition to Baker finally being able to work on an Apes movie, Danny Elfman got to compose the score. Just like the rest of the movie, the post-production was also rushed, as Burton only had 3 months to edit the film, where he usually spent close a year editing his other movies. But despite the harsh deadlines, Tim Burton was able to complete the film, and after 13 years of countless scripts, writers, directors, actors, and producers coming and going, the Planet of the Apes returned to the big screen in 2001. But its reception was less than stellar. Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes debuted on July 27th of 2001 with an impressive weekend gross of $68 million, which at the time made it 20th Century Fox's biggest opening weekend of all time. It reigned number 1 in the box office for 1 week until it was dethroned by Rush Hour 2 the following weekend. In the US, it would make $180 million, and overseas, it would make $182 million, for a total worldwide gross of $362 million. And against a budget of $100 million, that made it a certified financial success and the 9th highest grossing movie of 2001. However, the reviews for the film were not as kind as the box office. Planet of the Apes currently holds a 43% critic and a 27% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. It also has a 2.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd and a 5.7 out of 10 on IMDb. Roger Ebert gave the film 2.5 stars and said this: "The movie is great looking. Rick Baker's makeup is convincing even in the extreme close-ups, and his apes sparkle with personality and presence. The sets and locations give us a proper sense of alien awe. Tim Burton made a film that's respectful to the original and respectable in itself, but that's not enough. 10 years from now, it will be the 1968 version that people will still be renting." And although the film didn't score any Oscar nominations, it did win a Golden Raspberry for Worst Remake. Overall, a majority of moviegoers didn't enjoy the film, and it has been regarded as one of the worst films in the Planet of the Apes franchise. Leading up to the film's release, Fox stated that they would make a sequel if the film was successful. However, after its release, they changed their tune a little bit. Although many of the actors said they would return if Burton was to make another one, Burton was against this idea. Here are his exact words on if he would make a sequel: "I'd rather jump out a window." Despite the positive box office, Fox decided not to go forward with another Planet of the Apes movie, possibly due to the critical reception of the film and Burton's reluctance to return to the property. However, They would return to the franchise 10 years later with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was a big success critically and financially, and spawned sequels that are still being made to this day, with the most recent one being Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which came out in 2024. So it seems like this property was able to persevere in the end. The story of 2001's Planet of the Apes is a wild one, with huge names like Oliver Stone, Chris Columbus, James Cameron, Peter Jackson, and more being attached at one point or another. After starting and stopping several times over a 13-year period, the movie finally got made with Tim Burton at the wheel. However, a short deadline caused every stage of production to be rushed, which resulted in a mess of a movie. So that's the wild story behind Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. But what are your thoughts on the film? Have you seen it? What's your favorite movie in the Planet of the Apes franchise? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. This has been Tom from Isenhart Productions, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next week. Here's a clue for next week's video. That is, if I can get it done in time. It's probably going to be over an hour long.
Question, do we really consider Paul Giamatti to be just a character actor in this stage of his career?